Hello there and welcome to my view from the piano bench. We do this on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. typically here on my Joe Holt's Notes YouTube channel, in addition to Piano for My Friends on Thursday evening. If you have been watching regularly and you're not connected with me on Facebook or on my email list, then you may have just felt I disappeared for a couple of weeks. If I did have a way to connect with you, then you would know that I deliberately took those 2 weeks off because of 2 consecutive jazz festivals that really became one big consecutive blur. Especially the second one, but really both of them. And for the last week, until yesterday really, just starting yesterday, I was completely detached from everything because it was just an immersive experience, which is great. So if I just disappeared on you and you didn't know what happened, sorry about that. I wasn't sure that I was going to do that when I recorded the prior video to this, so I didn't announce it. But if you follow me on Facebook or receive my email, actually, no, you wouldn't have gotten it in my email. That's right, because I only do that once a month. So if you are on Facebook, follow my musician page. If you search for me and you find me, of course I have a kind of common name, especially my first name. If you friend request me, don't be offended if I don't accept it necessarily, because I accept people whose names I recognize, even if I just met you. But that's not where you're going to get information on music anyway. It's my musician page. So you search under pages for me, and then you'll see Joe Holt Musician Band. That was a long explanation. Thank you to those of you who support and encourage me through the links you'll find on the support page of my website. And you'll see a link to that page in the video description. Here we go. So, am I exhausted? Absolutely. And it's a really fun exhaustion. And so much is going on, and so much went on. Of all the jazz festivals I've been to, the most, I think, consequential so far has been this last Sun Valley Jazz and Music Festival. And at least this week, and maybe for another week or two, or maybe even more, who knows what I'll do, I don't know, I will recount or recall experiences or things I learned there, because I say the stages are school. Tons of stages, tons of school, and I'm a little too tired to talk coherently, but I need to record this video now, so hopefully I can power through, and hopefully I don't make a fool of myself. Anyhow, so I'm titling this video, "You Never Know Who's Listening." And I come back to this theme as a general theme when I do public shows, and just for myself. You never know who's listening. You never know how consequential the particular moment is. Whether it benefits you or it benefits someone else, that you'll never know about. So there's this one young vocalist, Seamus, on the circuit, and I haven't been in this circuit for 15 years. Starting with a festival a few months ago, but then this one is the bigger one. It's been 15 years since I've been to Sun Valleys, and especially like young kids in their 20s, I wouldn't have seen them. And so I got to meet Shameless. Sorry, Seamus. Gosh, so I was tired for the first time, and it would be too stereotypical to call him a Sinatra singer. You'd only say that in terms of that he sings the older music, but he's a solid young vocalist, and he's taking it all in, and he's using the stage as a school every time he gets up there. That was my first set, the one that I had to basically come off the airplane and go to, not realizing that I had set myself up for motion sickness. I mean, not motion sickness, altitude sickness, which I didn't get rid of entirely until the 3rd day, or well into the 2nd day. But that was my first experience, and we were talking in the Duchin room in the bar, hanging out one night. This is a difference, by the way, between me now and how I handled the festivals before. I didn't do any of the hangs. I didn't socialize at all. I say to myself, not the best move. And I'm in a different place now, and also, realizing what this is, and, valuing the rapport with the musicians. So we're sort of hanging out, and, I'm giving Seamus advice, and, Jimmy Lawler is going on this big, long thing about, being a young musician and playing music that's, before everybody's time now. And then I felt the ability and need to just jump in and just add one sentence. And it was like, yeah, that's a sentence, which is, so Seamus, when I sit down and play the piano in public, I'm aware that at any moment I may be a discovery. Bingo. And he got it. And I'm not just playing things that people want to know that they want. I may be what they never knew they wanted until they hear it. And this is a larger theme with me, and I won't go into that now, but it's the idea of, in the arts, particularly in music in my case, there are entry points. And you'd like to believe, and I hold to this, that everyone has one in the whole history of Western classical music style periods. And of course, you can broaden this to other cultures, but just within Western music, from the Renaissance till now, there are distinct style periods. There are distinct approaches, and some are more appealing to particular people than others. And we all have different places. And if you're open-minded to all of it, you will find something that draws you in. Once you're drawn in, you're connected to all the other stuff in the timeline, even though you're going to favor where you are, because we all are grounded someplace, and then we navigate from that, right? And in jazz from, ragtime on is the same evolution, just a lot faster, harmonically and, structurally, good enough for now. Same evolution as the classical one that took 500 years instead of 100 years-ish. And then some people prefer Louis Armstrong. Some people do prefer Kenny G. Some people prefer Stan Getz. Some people prefer whatever. Chick Corea, And once you're in, you're connected to all of it, right? So the idea of being a discovery is the acknowledgement always that someone's listening. You never know who. You're connected to that person. You're connected to those people. You're connected to the space when that is your larger connection to it, right? So having said all that, as kind of a setup, actually, although a long setup, for me that was relatively short. I want to recount now that first set that I had, and the experience that I had for the 10 minutes before the set started. I will say, it's not really a spoiler alert, it's just like going forward in the story. I made a new friend who, at least possibly, if not probably, is watching this. Hiya, Jim. And why would I think that could happen? So I get to my room. I think I got to lay down for 15 minutes and take like 3 ibuprofen. I purposely allow myself to get dehydrated in the plane so I don't have to keep getting up and use the bathroom. Too much information, but plane trips are problematic for me. Anything where I have to stay in place. And I basically brought altitude sickness on myself, which I realized a little bit later. But I'm like, oh, right? But I get over to him. Wait a minute, I'm confused. That wasn't my first set Wednesday. That was my second set Thursday. My first set Wednesday was with Seamus. And then, yeah, okay, since I talked about that, that's when I was feeling like, oh, gosh, right? And then, okay, I don't have any more sets. Band starts tomorrow. I'm going to go lay down. And then I get approached to play the 8 o'clock set, which was like a blues kind of semi-rock set, which I'm sitting there when I'm actually doing the set that night, and it's like, no, my bag. It's not my bag, man. But anyhow, it's like, so I wound up playing 2 sets the first day. Jimmy Lawler played those 2 sets. Nobody else in the band had any sets. They had a normal day. Nothing about me is normal. But, so what I'm talking about is the second day. The second day, I had a band set in the afternoon, then a 2 piano set, and all I knew was his name, Jim Martinez. I tried to look for him online, and I didn't try very hard. I'm like, this is hard. I don't know where I'm getting. And then I got distracted, you know, shiny, and then off I went. But there's also a whole lot going on. And so I just figured, okay, I'm going to meet this Jim guy. Because, you know, those of you who know me, especially locally, know that I played a lot of 2 piano shows by now. And it's its own art, but it doesn't give me any pause that it's going to happen. And it really didn't give me any pause, or not a lot, that it was going to happen with someone I had no idea where they were going to be coming from. And in the festival such as that, it's not really monolithic. You know, there are different stripes of musicians, and if I use a particular terminology, I really lucked out with Jim. But it was, you know, a providential thing. And he and I got to talk extensively later, and we both see through the same lenses with all of that. But anyhow, I had that 2 piano set sandwiched in between 2 band sets. And then soon thereafter was the big band set, which was a long set. So it was a long for me, right? And I was starting to feel better with the altitude sickness. But anyhow, I get to the opera house where the 2 piano set was 10 minutes before the set was to start. You get a half hour between sets, and then I had to get myself packed up off the stage. I had to actually find the opera house. Once you find it the first time, oh, me, I could lose it every time and have to use my GPS walking around the Sun Valley Resort. But that's just me. But I made my way to the opera house, right? And I figured there's 2 guys talking up front by the stage in front of the piano. I'm going to bet they're the sound guy and the other piano player. And they were. And that conversation started about 3:20. And our set started at 3:30. And pretty much the first thing he said to me blew me completely away. Which he said was, I've been following your videos. So he did his due diligence better than I, and then beyond that, fell into a rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole was not all the, I'm sure you watched some maybe, but all the performance videos I posted over all these years. Because what's current now on my YouTube channel are these hour videos that started with the pandemic, which is a subject I haven't really talked about. It's a slightly disconcerting thing because the whole, you know, center of gravity of my YouTube channel is way different than I had set it up to be before with all these hour videos, but I keep doing them, right? And that's what he was talking about. So he watched a bunch of piano for my friends, and he watched a bunch of these, my view from the piano bench. And he was really syncing up with it. And he was telling me things that I said. Hey, I agree with that, and that's great, and I love what you're doing. And I'm just like, what? And it's like, geez. Yeah. And in the last year or so, you know, I've wondered often, not aloud, but often, you know, if I'm carrying these videos on too long. Because I'm capable of that. I'm a creature of habit, routine. And I can take these habits and routines beyond, you know, their useful life or to the point of diminishing returns and all of that. And of course, there is a diminishing aspect because this is not the primary means now where people who aren't let's say, housebound anyway or whatever, are going to get their entertainment or make their connections. So the audience for this has shrunk, but it's stayed at a certain level, and there are, it's like few but mighty that watch regularly. I appreciate all of you. And there is a discovery aspect to this, obviously. And then new people will find it. And the Piano for My Friends videos are the one good thing that they do that the other videos don't for me. It's allow me to express and portray the kind of unique part of my spontaneity. The part that can go from front to back, go from tune to tune, and have it kind of be one thing. You know, and the transitions sort of happen, and if I'm really like in the space, the transitions might well be more effective than the tunes. But then it's like, great, I'm in that zone, right? So there's been like a what am I doing aspect to this, but I keep doing it and just waiting to hit a wall or feel intuitively that, you know, I'm done. Although I know I'm continuing to connect with all of you, right? So whammo, here comes Jim, and it's like, this is the first, no, it's not true. It's not the first evidence I've had that people have gone down rabbit holes with my videos. But this one was different. You know, and, you know, it was just different. And you never know who's listening. And I completely understand that, right? But that means if you don't know who's listening, you don't know what kind of impact you're making. You don't know what's going on. You just have to trust it. So in the first 2 of those 10 minutes, I acknowledge that there was already a bond between Jim and I. He had a lot of experience with me. Now, it was quickly going the other way because we were just connecting, talking about it, right? And people, I think to a person, were amazed there. Especially when I told them, no, I don't know this guy. I met him for the first time 10 minutes before we started playing. Because after the first 2 tunes where I suggested we each play a solo, for better or worse, that's what we did. Then we just played together. I don't know what all the other 2 piano sets did. You know, if they all played together or they played separately back and forth. But it was super comfortable for me to do. You know, and Jim and I had a connection already. It's like we hit the ground with, you know, all of his investment of time watching my videos, and I'm still blown away. But more than that, more importantly, that validated, because all you really need is a little encouragement that you're doing something good or something positive, or you're making an impact, or you're being substantive, or you're being helpful or useful, and that just fuels you going forward. So, you know, that was a lovely experience. As far as playing, I still wasn't in the zone, except accompanying. There's not a whole lot that can mess up me accompanying. Everything can be wrong, and it doesn't matter. And it was so easy to accompany Jim because he's such a great musician, right? And he just, you know, I could give him what amounted to a rhythm section. So, you know, he wasn't always playing it that way because he was approaching it as 2 pianos. But while I was accompanying him, he could play it in the same way he would with a band set with his bass player and drummer and a guitar player if he had one. You know? And it was cool. When we reversed roles, I still wasn't really in the space, and I was struggling with that. But what an experience that was. You never know who's listening. So you talk about or I talk about, I should say, all the time these days, the idea of conscious awareness. And when you're consciously aware of something and you're in that cognitive space, that intuitive performance space is over to the side. And of course, you need to reverse that. And among the things that you can be aware of that will mess you up, if you're aware of something, by the way, completely unrelated, you know, like you're playing and then you're making your grocery list while you're playing, that's actually good. If you know what you're doing enough that you don't have to think about it, and that's the goal, right? And then you can make your grocery list while you're playing, and your creative thing's over here, your mind's over here. But if you have an awareness that, oh, somebody's listening, or a particular person is listening, or I wonder who is listening, not good. That's one of the struggles about performance that you have to get past. You have to not care. But to not care means more than just an attitude of, okay, I'm just going to not care. It's actually moving away from the even awareness, although that's the caring part. But it's like, if you're thinking, I don't care about this. You know, it's funny. I just started to do this, and I had to stop playing because I was thinking about what I was going to say. This might be a good time to repeat something, a little example I've done a few times. And again, this is my litmus test for myself if I'm in a creative space. Could I hold a conversation while I'm improvising? Because if I'm thinking about what I'm improvising, I'm partly thinking, partly just observing. Really more observing than thinking. And I guess I'm validating it because I'm able to talk to you. And I'm not thinking much about this. Or then I'm unaware. I am unaware. See, I am sort of thinking. It doesn't get the word secondary dominant out, which is, you know, like I thought, oh, look, I'm playing that chord to here. You know, this is probably not the best day for me to demonstrate, but the idea. Funny, I was supposed to demonstrate that I could talk while doing that, but I actually didn't want to talk at that time. You know, I wanted to just be immersed in that freedom. But, so you're not getting a good demonstration, but you get an explanation. If somebody comes up to me and starts talking to me while I'm playing, if it's something I don't have to think about, I can do it. And if I'm comfortable doing that, just have some structure. What do we want to talk about? Let's see, behind the phone is kind of a mantle, a full fireplace. Yes, and I have Christmas tinsel up all year, and I don't let you know that, but I just told you. Pictures and a painting by a teenage girl who passed away soon after making the painting in the 70s. Or it was the 80s, early 80s. And it was a pop band I played in. And when everybody else had passed that was related to it, I inherited the painting. And it sits there with a very sort of 70s, you know, keep on trucking kind of vibe, you know, and not, you know, obviously done by a young person, sincere, meaningful, not really professional, but it's like, and sometimes I let people see it. Name of the band at the time was East Wind, and there it is, and I stare at it. Okay. So I still semi-struggle because I'm tired with this, but if I'm aware somebody's listening, you get nervous, but I kind of like look at it just more than, oh, you're nervous. Actually, you're in your own way. You're in your own way in the same way you would be in your own way thinking about anything, right? And when I first started doing these videos, the live stream, it took a few weeks to start to get a sense of how I'm making the connection with the audience that isn't there. And with the live stream, I began to be able to feel the non-local connection I was making with people who are watching. Now that I'm doing videos, it's really a little different, but it isn't. So anyhow, I had this set with Jim, and we both really, really appreciate it. And the people who were there were like, in fact, I can't tell you, the room wasn't super packed, right? There were a fair amount of people there. I kept getting stopped. Jim, if you're watching, did you get stopped too? About that set. There was one guy who stopped me like 5 times to keep telling me about it. But it really made an impact on people, what we were able to do. And in the bigger scheme of things, that was an establishment of a connection. And then we just found ourselves, I think it was the next night, in the cafeteria at the same time. And Jim and I just went right down our esoteric rabbit holes. And we see through much the same lenses. And I learned something. Not about piano. About grounding. Which is something I've been kind of playing around the edges with. He's all into it, and he's got a video that he was experimenting with a voltmeter attached to him. And he would be holding this charge, and then when he would take his foot out, you can't see my foot, I'm actually doing it for some funny reason, taking it out of my slipper thing here, foot rest shoe, and he placed his foot in the ground, and then the charge would dissipate, and he would be grounded. Okay. So, just so you know, Jim, I did it for the first time last night. I stood out in my front yard for about 15 minutes and stared at the moon and wondered what was going to be crawling up my leg. But nothing that I noticed. But that connection was facilitated by these videos. And there's been other connections that have been facilitated by these videos. And some of you who watch, I do get kind of overwhelmed or just loaded. And there's one person in particular that I really owe a response to. And since I only know your first initial and not your name, the first name, I can't really, I could say your last name. But anyway, you know who you are by me saying that. And you'll hear from me at some point, and hopefully soon. It is hard to keep up with all of this. But it's all about connection, and you never know who's listening. You've probably heard me tell this story before, but I just love this story, and it might not even be true, right? But it's one of the several conflicting accounts of how Vince Guaraldi got the gig for the Charles Schulz television specials, right? And it was in a book that seemed authoritative, so I'm going to go with this as the true story. But probably something related to it is, at least. And it's one of those you never know who's listening stories, right? Where Vince Guaraldi had his hit in 62 or 3 with Cast Your Fate to the Wind. Why am I taking my single off? Mendelsohn was in a cab in San Francisco where Vince Guaraldi was from. And every radio station was playing Cast Your Fate to the Wind every 20 minutes because the big news in San Francisco guy gets a hit, right? And Lee Mendelsohn hears it and says, that's the music I want for Charlie Brown. And whether that's the exact true story, I don't know, but I like it. And in its meaning, it is certainly true. There's truth in it. You could say that to the extent that's true, Vince Guaraldi had no idea that Cast Your Fate to the Wind was his audition piece to be able to compose all the other Charlie Brown music. Actually, not all the other. There was none. But that first television special, and I think there was a commercial or something beforehand. I don't know exactly what. Right? Same key, same feel. They're kind of similar, right? That happened because somebody was listening. Now, speaking of Jim Martinez, Jim, I did get to your website. I'm talking as if you are watching, so let me back up, even though you probably are watching. I did get to Jim's website now that I, have some clarity, and I'm past the 2 festival weeks together of just, and one of the many things he does is a Vince Guaraldi, concert tribute bag thing. I have to really dive into it. So I almost feel like I'm stepping on Jim's toes by, but I'm not, of course. But that's just cool. That's just really cool. You never know who's listening. So, when I was a younger musician, going back to my conversation with Seamus, who's in his 20s, I call him Shameless. That's probably happened before, but that's because my tongue doesn't work when I need a nap, which has been my perpetual state for the last week and a half. I knew that my music was not center of gravity of the culture, and I was playing things that maybe people had not heard before, or maybe playing them in a way they hadn't heard it before. And you've heard me tell the I Found Mozart story of my friend Walt. I won't repeat that one, but it's the idea that once you are into the arts, then you're connected to it, right? So, the favorite compliment I get over the years, and I think it still is, although others are maybe at least as important now, but can't tell you how many times I've heard, I don't like jazz, but I like you. Yes. And that means we made a connection. But when I was Seamus's age, I was playing this old music that was still in the life experience of a percentage of the people who would listen. Let's say that the year was 1985, when I was 25 years old. And let's say I'm playing, which by the way, Jim and I played, and that was interesting. Right? So if you apply the long-term memory formula that I've told you about, that I learned in music therapy, that the strongest memories, and technically this is with Alzheimer's disease, but I think this is also kind of baked in the cake with everyone as they get older, is college years, 1822, right? So you do the math, entertainer, ragtime music, early part of the 19th century, 1900, 1910, all of that, right? And then you add like 20 years, and now you're like 1930, 1940, 1930, 1940. And so if it's 19, did I say 25? Yeah, so if it's 1985, I'm 25 years old. And actually, I did that math in reverse. Because people who had first-hand experience with ragtime would have had to be 100 years old then. And I should have done like U.B. Blake. This is because I'm tired. When I'm tired, apparently, I do math in reverse in my head. Yeah, I do most things in reverse and then look at them backward. It's like holding the mirror up twice to see forward. Really? I love Memories of You, and I can't even think of how it goes now. Because when I finally was able to get to a piece of the Dave Bennett Band set that Jim Martinez was in, one of the tunes they played was Moonglow. Which does not sound like the Benny Goodman Quartet that was my reference to Moonglow, but it was still very cool. So, if I'm playing music from, this now works, 1936, 30-something. And those people were born in like 1915. It's 1985. They're 70 years old. That's what I was trying to do. Which means, very likely, they're alive. And listen. Mistakes left and right. But anyway, there's Moonglow. And the people who would hear it at the time would be connected to something in their long-term memory, and that might help them discover it, even like they remember it, but they never paid attention to it. There's in other words, a dynamic of being able to have a first-hand experience with something that could help the connection. And the point of me saying this is when I talk to Seamus, that's not available to him. And it's the same as when I've talked about my friend Cody Level, who's a little older than Seamus. He's in his early 30s now, and many of you are aware of him. He lives now in Middle Delaware, but he's from Rehoboth. And when soon after he graduated from college, Shenandoah University, he got picked up by the Glenn Miller Band as lead tenor. And he was on the road for 4.5 years. As lead tenor and vocalist in the singing group, pretending to be the Modernaires, but the Modernaires are actually like a copyrighted or patented or whatever trademark thing that somebody else had. And I've always felt with Cody, you know, the sense that in a way he's at a disadvantage to me. But he was coming up, there was still like a very small amount of people who had that first-hand experience. But like the guys who were helping him come up are like guys that are my age. And I've told you the story about, you know, when I felt I was being passed the baton from the one who was being told the stories to the one who tells the stories, right? Now Seamus is, you know, younger than Cody. And he's just falling in love with this music. He's discovering it. And you were talking about that dynamic for him, that he doesn't have the benefit that people my age had, that there was still a generation of people connected to the music. You know, and I've told you my Cab Calloway story, which, you know, wouldn't happen to a young person today or whatever. And so when I said to him, you know, you can always be a discovery, I felt a certain poignancy that that's even more important to him than it was to me at the time, because of the lack of first-hand experience of the audience, any of them, with that music, unless they've heard it, you know, movies and that kind of thing. But it wasn't their culture. That's my point. Yeah, and we all come up in a particular culture. And now this is completely unrelated, but not entirely, because everything's connected. It's like young musicians and swing. And Jim, if you're watching, you know, chime in, you know, or talk to me, message me later, because this is an interesting subject. I should have thought to do a video about this, because swing, that feel, was a cultural norm in like the 30s, right? The 30s and 40s, right? What key do they do that? I'm so tired. Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing, or maybe other things it lacks. And you don't get a sense of swing because you practice it and figure it out. Because you count in 1 and 2 and, you know, 3 and 1 lolly, 2 lolly pop thing, right? It's only felt. And you probably heard me say this, or maybe know it anyway. That's the swing rhythm, that rhythm, you know. Precise rhythm I'm playing is non-notatable. You know, it's like pi, not apple, but 3.1415962 infinity, right? It's not a precise number. It's, and with swing, it's felt. So if you grew up in the swing era, you knew how to swing. You knew what swing felt like. If you're coming up today as a young player, unless you immerse yourself in recordings and live there, because that's what it's about living there, right? Then, you know, your sense of swing is going to, I don't know how to say it, be less, you know, correct, but, you know. And I see like jazz, I don't look real hard at jazz education because it just makes my brain hurt. But you can see videos or find books about getting a swing feel. Yeah, and I've heard it described as something that is notatable. Some people will say it's a triplet. You know, da 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 da. Some people will say it's a division of 5, 3, and then 2. Dun, 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 right? And then most people will say somewhere in there. And it's like everybody just agrees on it, right? So imagine if you're a young person today and pretty much all you listen to is hip-hop, which, by the way, I'm starting to come to terms with even more so, that, you know, people 35 and younger, they're going to say, my favorite song is, and it's a hip-hop track. And like, and I'm being the purist, like, that's not a song, that's a hip-hop thing. No, it's a song. You know, Eminem thing or whatever. Like, oh my goodness. But what kind of like rhythmic relationship is there between that and swing? Because that's their culture. My point. So Seamus lives there in that swing era. He's got it. He is being a potential discovery. Not just now, like I would have been, the older people primarily, or people connected with it, or having a sense of familiarity. Now, if he's out there and the audience is wide-ranging, if he can pull off, you know, doing this not just to seniors all the time, right, or older people, there will be younger people who only know straight eighth rhythms. By straight eighth, everything, you know, derived from this, which in my world, you know, you get older styles, like the first sort of straight eighth kind of introduction would be Latin, you know, like bossa nova. Dun, 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 dun. Why am I singing and not playing? Because I can't sing, but apparently I can't play now either. That's not swing. That's straight eighth, right? But there'd be people who've never heard it before, right? And it might be that there's an old soul out there like me whose heart starts to dance and sing along to that. And then they feel it. Discovery, right? You never know who's listening. I remember having some exchange with somebody years ago, kind of assuming that if you had sort of a lesser gig, just like a background thing where, you know, supposedly no one was paying attention, that you just kind of can phone it in and it's okay. And I'm like, I was never good with the idea of phoning it in. I could do it, but it's like, why would you miss the opportunity to be a discovery? And that's the other part of this. The privilege and ultimately responsibility of it all. Because you never know. That one time that you're blowing off may be the chance you had. To do whatever. Right? And of course you want to look at it selfishly and says to, you know, make that connection with that one person who can make your career. You know, which is like the, okay, how often am I struck by lightning in my lifetime? You know, but it's also, you know, a real thing. But really, remember what I like to say, purify the motive, elevate the outcome, right? So you just have that sense of don't waste the opportunity to be a discovery for the sake of that process itself and for the sake of how it's going to benefit that person out there. So I've motivated to talk about this because of my newfound connection with Jim Martinez. And it was sort of my way of connecting to the Sun Valley Festival without just saying, okay, this video is about this festival. As I do festivals going forward, I kind of don't want to do that. I did it once earlier this year with Pismo for its own sake, and it's probably the least effective video I have. I also did it in my hotel room, which is not a good idea. But let's talk about that Sun Valley Festival for a minute. I've been all over the map. If you're still watching, congratulations. I respect you. You can put up with all this. So much profundity, man. So much profundity. And maybe I'll do a whole video on this, which is bringing together two really important pieces of my world in that festival. My long-standing, lifelong, really, relationship with the Mediri brothers. It'll be 50 years next year, and those boys are my brothers. You know, our original trio, yeah, that's where we started, right? And I'm back with their band. I've been in and out many times over the years. You know, it's just the ebb and flow, because we have our separate lives, but that connection, you know, you always wind up coming back home, and you always know where home is. What a huge lesson for me to learn with those Materi brothers, you know, and you know, it's thick, man. It's thick with the three of us, and then my connection with Sharon Sable, over the last few years, and oh my, and the sync that we have, and what we're able to accomplish together, and locking in, and without going into all the circumstances, it worked out that Sharon could come to this festival. And Sharon's experiences in music are vast and broad, and largely in other realms, right? And this is her first experience doing something like this. And, you know, and she's still, you know, she's always going to be discovering, as we all are, new things. And, you know, the spirit of this culture, her roots as a young singer were in the pop music world, pop music industry. And, you know, she knew she wasn't that. And she so connects to this. It was so much fun to watch her joy all week, but to watch all my friends in the band connect, to watch everybody connect, and all of a sudden to create something brand new. So Sharon, actually, for those of you who may have been to the festival and you watched Sharon's thing with the band, you know, Sharon had done a couple of gigs with Joe Mediri that I was on, and that facilitated the connection. But they really weren't, you know, band gigs to invite Sharon to. And her first time singing with the band was her first set of the festival. And she sang with the big band that night. She had never done that before. And you don't put that out there because it sounds like she's green and a newbie. She's not green at all. She's a seasoned, 40-something-year-old musician. I almost said her age. Sorry, Sharon. But she's a seasoned a musician as can be at her age. But bringing together these two parts of my world were just so magical, and the connections that we were able to make, and musicians that I've never talked to, and some of which I've known about for a long time, making the connections with them. Oh my goodness, you never know who's listening. All right, I'll say this. There's one particular piano player who I've only ever known about. I've never even really, don't think I've heard play live. When I did the festivals before, he might have been in the same festival, but I never really heard him play. His name is Randy Morris. Really fine pianist. But coming out of a different bag, you know, he was one of the many Disney musicians in Florida, but he's got the, you know, the novelty bag thing. I don't know how I'd feel about, you know, being compared to Liberace, you know, but it's that, you know, I people understand what I'm trying to do, and I hope you do too, right? Because there's a broad range of people. He's not somebody who's like in an Oscar Peterson bag and, you know, groups like that. He does other things, you know, that I can't do. When I was in the airport coming home, and we were all waiting for a flight, and I walked by Randy and another musician, I forget his name, the bass player for the Bennett band, and he called me over, and I'm like, because I guess I never felt the need or whatever to initiate a conversation with Randy, who is a total stranger. And he came to the Blossom set, the last set of the festival, where Sharon and I did the duo. And he pretty much made me cry, or at least just about. And there's a bunch of things lately that have been making me cry. I had no idea, no idea who's listening, the impact it has on them. And of course, I realized by the end of the festival, Sharon too, the connections we made and the impact we had on people individually and together, and in all the different configurations. But it's like, just because I would be not judgmental, but just, I guess, stereotyping Randy Morris's playing, that he would be so connected to what I was doing. And it's a similar, different, but similar thing to Jim telling me he'd watched like 20 of my videos. It's like, you got to be kidding. You never know who's listening. That's why I do these. See, I'm going to cry. I'm just tired. But you never know who's listening. Thank you for listening. And as we go on, my intention, now that I've kind of been open for the first time about the precariousness of this in a way, because I kind of really don't have time for them, but I'm going to keep doing them. If there's a need, if there's or purpose, I want to keep doing it. It would feel differently if I had a lot of subscribers and things. Everybody who's been with me has stayed with me. And I will tell you, I don't make a hard pitch for this, but if you do watch these with some regularity and intend to continue, and you would encourage me beyond, immensely, let's say, if you hooked yourself up with the Patreon, which is just a little monthly drop in the tip jar, can be very little money. That's not the point. But it's the connection is what it's all about. And I know people are listening. I mean, whatever the environment, somebody's always listening. Even if it's the birds, the squirrels, and God out in the field someplace, someone's always listening. It's profound. It's incredibly profound. Whatever you do, man, connect. I don't know if this made sense, but I'm out of juice. We'll keep the weekly videos going now. Thanks for understanding about the 2 weeks of missing videos if you didn't know why. And thanks for being connected with me. Thank you that I can connect with you. Hope to see you soon. As I knock things over in my house, trying to get back to the phone. It's a really short distance between here and there. You think I could do it? Let's try. Look at that. I didn't fall down. Huh?